What's up, everybody? In this video, I'm going to talk about a pretty common mistake I've seen from aspiring data scientists and full-fledged data scientists. So let's jump right into it. Alright, so the situation is like this. You got someone who's pretty excited to get started on a project. Maybe they've seen some new technology or got their hands on some new data. Alright, so then once the data is found, they start just jumping right into it. Maybe they read some blogs, or if they already had a technology in mind, they kind of start figuring out how to implement that technology. And what follows can be a pretty lengthy process of learning about different things and maybe training some models and kind of seeing what happens. One thing that might result from this is maybe a very long Jupyter notebook with a ton of Python code. So what might happen is what I think is a pretty important step in the process might get skipped. Now, after hearing it, you might think, oh, I never skipped this step. Well, to be honest, I've seen this time and time again, so I thought I'd make a quick video about it. Now, the step I'm talking about is to identify a good metric. Alright, so what do I mean by a good metric? In most cases, what I mean is a single number. This number can be used to figure out how good your model is performing. A very common example of a good metric would be the accuracy in a classification problem. Coming up with a good metric can actually be a pretty tricky problem. Let's think of a quick example for the classification. Suppose you're designing a facial recognition system. What kind of metric are you going to use? Something like this could be pretty paramount to the security of maybe a building or your phone or something like this. So having someone being able to break into that could be a pretty big issue. Thus, you might not want to make your metrics say just the typical accuracy, but you might want to say, oh, it's very important that I don't let anyone get in that shouldn't. This might lead you to learn things like recall and precision, which we won't talk about here, but I just want to highlight, even for a simple problem like this, identifying the metric can be a little bit tricky. I would say it gets even more tricky as you start dealing with things like large language models and chatbots and things like this. It's very easy to start playing around with these things, which is great and highly recommended. But if you're going to try to build something that's going to be used by other people, coming up with a good metric can really aid in the development process. If you or your team are doing, like, say, prompt engineering or fine-tuning or complicated things like this, it can be really useful to have a concrete metric that says, hey, this method is better than another method and this is why. It can be pretty tricky because coming up with a good metric can actually be pretty challenging. Imagine your goal is to create a chatbot that's going to be user-facing. What kind of metric would you use as you are developing this? Well, if you made it this far in the video, you're a legend, and leave a comment with what you think would be a good metric for designing a chatbot. Thanks for watching. I hope you liked it, and I'll see you in the next one.